So, Brett, why is it different than a 1031? And what pitfalls do you typically see with a 1031?
Absolutely. I'm going to give you an analogy to help you understand this, okay? So we don't get too much into techno babble. So basically, I want you to think about the 1031 exchange like the Blockbuster way of doing things. And so, Jake and Gino, do you remember going to Blockbuster on a Friday night? You're excited to rent that movie, and you're about
I even
to
bought
get that
posters
movie.
there. I bought wooden posters there back in the day and put them on my wall. I loved it.
We'd hang out at the local Taco Bell, get our tacos, go get our movie right on a Friday night. That was cool.
Antonello's Pizza and Fishkill, baby. Hit it up.
That was yours? Yeah, that was your restaurant. That's cool. So, but remember, if you didn't get that movie because someone steps right in front of you and takes that movie, right? So you got to settle for another movie. But then even if you got that movie, you got to return it within 3 days, and then you gotta pay that fine, that penalty, and basically it's a restrictive way of doing things. If you live in a cold environment, like I don't know, some parts of Tennessee or some parts of New York, you have to drive your car. Well, that's Blockbuster, right? Something happened. There was a Netflix that came in, right? And Netflix is seamless. There's no time pressure. There's some ongoing fees, sure, but it's a new way of doing things. And once you understand that, I believe for most cases, unless you can find a value add forced appreciation deal, there's no reason to ever use Blockbuster ever again. Okay, so what is a 1031? First of all, you got 45 days to identify and 180 days to close. We call that the shotgun wedding. Right. And back in the crash, what we found was people were overpaying in 04, 05, 06. And they knew they were, but they felt they had no other solution but the Blockbuster 1031. And so they're taking on equal or greater value, which is typically equal or greater debt. They're not having diversification, but they feel like they have to buy this deal. And so we actually just did a recent deal. We saved a failed 1031 exchange. This gentleman was selling 128 units in Georgia. Okay. He's owned properties for 30 years. He's multifamily value add guy. And for the first time, he's looking around. He's out of California and he's buying out of state. North Carolina, he's looking at deals at 4.5 caps. Deals that have been squeezed of the value add, right? The rents are already sky high. And he's going, why am I buying this? I've seen this story before. And then COVID-19 hit and he went, I'm extra cautious now. So he goes, instead of replacing $4.5 million of debt, buying a property at 8 or 9 or 10 million bucks, and overpaying because I don't like these deals on the intrinsic value of the cash flow per se. How about I do a deferred sales trust? So he did. So he got out of all of his debt. He parked $3 million into the deferred sales trust, and he's also in his 60s too, guys. He's like, I've made my wealth. I don't necessarily need to be so active in this. I'd like to put it with some other operators that have proven track records. So what did he do? He's diversified those funds into multifamily value add funds and into some single deals where he's passive, not using a 1031 exchange. And so it solved a number of things for him, right? Retirement partially, diversification, being out of debt, and it allows him to do something that he wanted to do for a while, which is a legacy play. He wants to and bought a big property in Montana, and his passion is to help build corporate leaders with giving back and create a retreat for them. So that's his passion legacy project, rather than being so active on the real estate side, all while being able to defer about $1.1 million of tax. And so what we like to say is the deferred sales trust is the Netflix because it provides transformational wealth and exit planning versus the old Blockbuster, which had forced him to overpay for a property, maintain activity, right? Take on all that debt and be in a position where he doesn't want to be in, right? So the transformation can be different, but the key here is what does the client want? And the timing piece with the deferred sales trust is the second thing. We don't have to buy back into properties at any time. In fact, one of the best deals is a deal for a guy in Minnesota. He sold a $20 million asset in 2006, and he played the Monday morning quarterback, right? He dropped back and he played it perfect. He sold at the peak, and he parked the funds in the deferred sales trust. Now, this guy hates the stock market. He's a commercial real estate guy, but he said, I'm not going to 1031 and overpay. I'm going to take a chance on this deferred sales trust. Parks the funds there. Okay, puts it into conservative stocks, bonds, and mutual funds, which is another thing the deferred sales trust can do. You don't have to put it into like kind of real estate. And he sat there safe. 5 years later, the bank calls him up and says, "Hey, would you like to buy the property back that we just foreclosed on?" And he goes, "Well, maybe. What's the price?" And they said, "Well, 60 cents on the dollar." He goes, "That sounds like a pretty good deal." So he reallocated the funds into an LLC. And then he purchased it all tax deferred at 60 cents on the dollar, right? So he did what? He sold high and he bought low, which is what our parents taught us to do. They didn't teach us to sell high and buy higher 180 days later. So once you understand how to do this and that it works, and there's been thousands of closes, billions under management, again, you're probably never going to go back to Blockbuster ever again.
You have just listened to another information-packed episode of Capital Gains Tax Solutions with Brett Swarts. We hope you enjoyed today's show and found it helpful. Visit capitalgainstaxsolutions.com to access the show notes and to access more resources. Don't forget to leave a review and join us again next time.